بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه ثم أما بعد. To proceed, Bab al-Ghusl. Al-Ghusl takes a little bit more, time, so that's why I wanted to start a little earlier, because it's a long chapter. Al-Ghusl min al-Janaba. Imam ibn Qudamah rahimahullah in his book al-Umdat says Bab al-Ghusl min al-Janaba, which means the chapter on ghusl. Ghusl is major ablution. If you call wudu the minor ablution, then ghusl will be the major ablution. You could call ghusl the ritual bath as well. Ritual bath. For min al-janaba, for major sexual ritual impurity. So for major sexual ritual impurity, that's what janaba means. Janaba means the major ritual impurity that we have due to, ejaculation or intercourse. The title of that chapter basically tells you that I'll talk to you about the ghusl that is incumbent on us in the state of janaba. But it does not tell you about the other types of ghusl that are incumbent on us. There are other types of ghusl that are incumbent on us, but Imam Qudamah does not include them here. And he did not include them elsewhere in the book. So I want you to take note of what I will say shortly, inshallah, about the incumbent types of ghusl. So he said, وَالْمُوجِبُ لَهُ خُرُوجُ الْمَنِيِّ وَهُوَ الْمَاءُ الدَّافِقِ وَالْتِقَاءُ الْخِتَانَيْنِ. What makes it required is the ejaculation of semen, which is the gushing water, and the meeting of the two circumcised parts. And the meeting of the two circumcised parts, meaning the one part passing the other. It means intercourse. So he lists two reasons only for making the ghusl incumbent. But in the madhab, in the Hanbali madhab, there are 5 other reasons that would make the ghusl incumbent. So what makes it required? He said ejaculation, and he said intercourse, and he said nothing else, right? So we have 5 more. One additional one in the Hanbali madhab is the mere descent of semen without ejaculation. I have to tell you, even though I'm Hanbali, that there is no clear proof on this one. When someone feels that the semen moved inside them, but it does not come out. And then we have menstruation, which the Shaykh will mention in the chapter of Hajj, and inshallah we have 3 more chapters to finish the whole thing, and we will be able to finish them in the next 2 sessions before we take the Ramadan break. We have Tayammum, we will finish inshallah next week, and we have Hayd and Nifas, 2 chapters that we will combine together. That is Hayd, menstrual bleeding, and Nifas, postnatal or postpartum bleeding. Postpartum bleeding, that's nifas. Okay, so now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. What are the other 2? Islam and death. Islam and death. Acceptance of Islam and dying would make ghusl required. Acceptance of Islam will require ghusl of you. You need to make ghusl. Dying will require the community to offer you ghusl. because you will not, when you die, you're not going to be able to do anything. So these are the 7 that would make ghusl incumbent. Death makes it incumbent on the community. Islam is controversial, whether the acceptance of Islam will make ghusl incumbent on the person is controversial. According to the Shafi'is and Hanbalis, it is. Then postpartum bleeding and menstruation is by consensus. By consensus. Ejaculation, by consensus. Intercourse, by consensus. So we have descent of semen and Islam, controversial. Okay. So the 5 that would make ghusl incumbent by consensus is ejaculation, intercourse, menstruation, postpartum bleeding, and death. But you could remove death because it would not be required of the person himself, it's required of the community. So the 5 on the living people who are alive, the 4 that will make ghusl incumbent by consensus will be ejaculation, intercourse, menstruation, postpartum bleeding. Remember those very well. So he said ejaculation of semen and intercourse. So ejaculation of semen without intercourse and intercourse without ejaculation. And you have the hadith there. I have hadith Abu Sa'id al-Khudri, which is reported by Muslim. إنما الماء من الماء. إنما الماء من الماء means water is incumbent upon water, or water is due to water. It means that washing the ritual bath, washing with water in the ritual bath, is incumbent upon the exiting of water, which means here the semen. So ejaculation without intercourse, including in wet dreams and everything, that would make ghusl required. Intercourse without ejaculation would also make ghusl required. Because the Prophet ﷺ said in the hadith of Aisha, which is reported by Tirmidhi and Abu Dawood, إذا التقى الختانان فقد وجب الغسل, or إذا جاوز الختان فقد وجب الغسل. When the circumcised part passes the other circumcised part, ghusl becomes mandatory. أنزل أو لم ينزل, whether ejaculation takes place or not. So in both cases, ejaculation without intercourse without ejaculation, and certainly when they both happen, then the ghusl will be required. Okay, up until here we should have also talked about, and I should actually mention this. I should not forget it. Well, if you don't make ghusl, if you have one of those reasons that will make ghusl incumbent upon you, if you have one of those reasons that will make ghusl incumbent upon you and you don't make ghusl, what are the things that you cannot be doing? What are the things that you can't be doing? 5 different things. In the Hanbali madhab, 5 different things. Praying by consensus, right? By consensus. He can't be praying. Tawaf according to the majority. And so that the Hanafis will prevent you from coming into the masjid, but they will. Tawaf does not require basically a ritual purity for them. But the Malikis and Shafi'is and Hanbalis, tawaf requires ritual purity. But at the end of the day, people will tell you to not make tawaf if you have major ritual impurity. Then you will have, in addition to praying and tawaf, what are the other things? Touching the mushaf with your bare hands, with bare hands, and that's according to the four madhahib. Recitation of one verse of the Quran or more, unless the verse is too long, then they say even less than one verse will be forbidden. One verse or more. Because part of the verse is not the Quran, al-Mu'jiz, the inimitable Quran. Part of the verse is not the Quran. But they say that sometimes if you recite half of Ayat al-Dain, or the verse about debts in the end of Surah al-Baqarah, that's half a page. Half of the verse is half a page. So they say that you should not even do that. But recitation of one verse or more, touching the Mus'haf, that's according to the four madhahib. And there is disagreement about the Hajj, the woman in her period and her recitation of the Quran in her period. And if she feels that she would forget the Quran, then she should recite. And we're talking about which recitation here, not this. This is not recitation, even though you're moving your lips. It is the recitation that they're talking about being forbidden here for the one in Janaba is the recitation with voice, with voice, utterances. That is the least recitation. But this, so you could review your Quran doing this, but not. Is it clear? So you're prevented when you're in Janaba from reciting the one verse or more of the Quran with voice. Not like this. Okay? And then the last one is staying in the masjid. Staying in the masjid. And that's according to the four Imams. And that is for the junub. There is not much disagreement over this. For the junub, for the ha'id, for the woman in her period, we will talk about this issue in detail, inshallah, in the chapter of Hajj. So these are the 5 things that you are prevented from doing when you are in this state. For all practical purposes, they are agreed upon by the four madhahib. With the issue of tawaf and the purity of tawaf, I told you about. So, you know, so if the azkar would be fine if it is for dhikr, not for recitation, because there is a difference between saying ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار, for instance, so as a form of dua or as a form of dhikr. When you recite, when you make dhikr with one verse of the Quran as dhikr, not qira'ah, then they would permit this. It is permissible to make a Quranic dhikr as a form of dhikr, not qira'ah. كان النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يذكر الله على كل أحيانه. The Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم used to remember Allah in all conditions. So what makes it required? We're done with this. And we are done with also what makes, what are the things that would be forbidden until you make ghusl. 5 things. Touching the Mus'haf, reciting the Quran, you know, staying in the masjid, and then tawaf, and most importantly, praying, for sure. Staying in the masjid.
Does that mean entering or staying?
No, staying is different from entering. You're allowed to enter, you are allowed to pass through it, you're not allowed to stay in the masjid. But passing through it is allowed. So that is the first one, what makes it required. By the way, ejaculation applies to men and women, as you will see in the book. And when it comes to women, and our scholars mention, you know, ma al-mar'a, or it's actually mentioned in the hadith. The ma al-mar'a that is mentioned in this case, basically, is the vaginal discharges that are produced upon sexual excitation and reaching the climax. Then the mandatory acts of ghusl. What are the mandatory acts of ghusl? He says, وَالْوَاجِبُ فِيهِ النِّيَّةُ وَتَعْمِيمُ بَدَنِهِ بِالْغَسْلِ مَعَ الْمَضْمَضَةِ وَالِاسْتِنْشَاقِ. Mandatory acts: the intention, washing the entire body, rinsing the mouth and the nostrils. The intention, washing the entire body, rinsing the mouth and the nostrils. The intention, that's certainly confirmed in the madhab. Washing the entire body, they consider rinsing the mouth and the nostrils to be part of your body. Because in the Hanbali madhab, they consider the mouth and the nose to be of the exterior, not the interior. The other scholars consider them to be of your interior. In the Hanbali madhab, they consider these to be of your exterior. So when Allah says to wash your face, the Hanbalis take this as including your mouth and your nostrils because they are part of your face. And they support this by statements from the Prophet ﷺ about wudu, about, إِذَا تَوَضَّأْتَ فَمَضْمِضْ وَبَالِغْ فِي الْإِسْتِنْشَاقِ إِلَّا أَن تَكُونَ صَائِمًا. When you make wudu, make madmada, and overdo your istinshaq unless you are fasting. So there are proofs to support the position of the Hanbali madhab in this regard. The Hanafis disagree with the Hanbalis on wudu. They agree on ghusl. So the Hanafis would still consider madmada and istinshaq wajib in ghusl, not in wudu. In wudu, they side with the rest of the madhab, Malikis and Shafa'is. They don't consider madmada and istinshaq to be wajib. But in ghusl, they do, like the Hanafis, consider madmada and istinshaq to be wajib, rinsing the mouth and the nostrils.
So the Hanbali madhab, if you had a limited amount of water, would you still have to wash your mouth and nose?
You have to wash your mouth and nose. It's considered part of the wudu and part of the ghusl. So washing the entire body, rinsing the mouth and the nostrils. What did he miss here that is Hanbali? That's according to the authorized position of the madhab. Tasmiyah, the mention of the name of Allah, is mandatory, not just recommended. But Imam Qudamah in this book mentioned a report from the madhab that is not the popular or the authorized position according to the latter generations. What you could always say Imam Qudamah is a greater authority than the latter generations. It's true. Imam Qudamah is greater authority than al-Buhuti and Madhab al-Hanbali. But that's that is the current state of affairs. Current state of affairs is that the latter generations, this is the position that has settled in the madhab, because the earlier authorities, they had different understandings and different basically choices. The latter generations picked from their choices some and considered them to be the authorized views of the madhab, and being of the latter generations, you follow the choices of the latter generations. It does not belittle the earlier authorities, but it is about consistency and about sort of structure, compliance, stuff like that. Now Imam Qudamah moves on. So is it clear now? Mandatory things in ghusl are very easy and very simple. The Prophet ﷺ said to Salama, and this hadith is reported by a Muslim. He said to Salama, إنما يكفيك أن تحثي على رأسك 3 حثيات ثم تفيدين الماء عليك فتطهرين. So it would be enough for you to take 3 handfuls of water, pour them over your head, and then pour water over your entire body, and then you become pure. This is the simplest sort of directions for us. the Malikis and Shafi'is who say that you don't need to do madmada and istinshaq, they use this hadith to argue against the Hanafis and Hanbalis who said that you need to do madmada and istinshaq. They said that the Prophet did not tell Salama in this hadith to do madmada and istinshaq. He just told her to pour water on her head, 3 handfuls, and on her body. Is there an argument? Do they have a point? Well, certainly they have a point. This hadith does not mention madmada and istinshaq. But anyway, the Hanafis and Hanbalis believe that madmada and istinshaq would be mandatory in ghusl. The Hanbalis would say that it is the major ablution. If they are mandatory in wudu, they would, be mandatory in ghusl. And they would also say that that they are part of the face, not the interior, part of the exterior, not the interior. And they use certain irrational arguments. If you put food in your mouth and spit it out, your fasting does not break, which means that your mouth is part of your exterior, not your interior. So they use some other rational arguments. But in general, the things that are agreed upon by consensus is simply pouring water over your whole body. That's it. Now, do you need to do dalk? Rub your skin when you do this? According to the Malikis, you do. You must do that. The Jumhur, the majority, said no, you don't. You just stand under the shower and get water over your whole body. Hanafi-wise, Shafi'i-wise, Hanbali-wise, you're fine. And certainly with the Hanafis and Hanbalis, in addition to standing under the shower, you will just do the madmada and istinshaq. You rinse your mouth and nostrils. You stood under the shower, you got the water all over your body, you made sure that the water got to your scalp, you did your madmada and istinshaq, you'll be fine according to the Hanafis, Shafi'is, and Hanbalis, and you can walk out in less than 30 seconds. So ghusl could take you less than 30 seconds. Sorry. You spent 30 minutes, but that's your own business. It takes you 30 seconds to finish your ghusl. You add the dalk by the Malikis, and it will take you 30 more seconds. Right? That's it. Yes.
Now, with that simple version of ghusl, can you do all of the 5 things that you could not do previously?
Absolutely. That simple version of the ghusl is mujzi, meaning will suffice you. And you're done. You removed your ritual impurity. So Imam al-Qudamah here mentioned the simple form of ghusl, which is the mandatory act. Mandatory acts gives you al-ghusl al-mujzi, which means the sufficient ghusl. And ghusl al-kamil will be mentioned afterwards. The complete ghusl will be mentioned afterwards. And he said, recommended acts, saying Bismillah, recommended. Here in this book, Hanbali-wise, it is mandatory. Or according to the authorized position in the madhab, it's mandatory. وَيَدْلِكُ بَدَنَهُ بِيَدِهِ, rubbing the body with the hand. Rubbing the body with the hand is recommended according to all the madhab. It's just that the Malikis considered it mandatory. وَيَفْعَلُ كَمَا رَوَتْ مَيْمُونَةً, doing as reported by Maymuna, who described the ghusl of the Prophet ﷺ, which is al-kamil, perfect ghusl, the complete ghusl. قالت سترت النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم فاغتسل من الجنابة. She said, I covered the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم and he made major ablution to remove major ritual impurity. فبدأ بغسل يديه, he started with by washing his hands. ثم صب بيمينه على شماله فغسل فرجه وما أصابه. Then he poured water with his right hand onto the left and washed his private organ and whatever may have been smeared by semen from it. ثم ضرب بيده على الحائط والأرض. Then he struck his hand against the earthen wall and the floor, basically to scrub off the residue from anything that could have gotten on his hand in terms of like discharges or anything. وتوضأ ثم توضأ وضوءه للصلاة, and performed the usual wudu for prayers. ثم أفاض الماء على بدنه ثم تنحى فغسل رجليه. Then he poured water over his body, then he moved away slightly and washed his feet. Now when it says that the Prophet struck do you really need to do this? Why did he do this? To remove the residue. And in this case, Abdullah ibn Umar would have done it, by the way, religiously, because he used to follow everything the Prophet said. But the correct position is that you don't really need to do this. Anything that is comprehensible, you should use your intellect. This is a comprehensible thing. He did this to remove the residue. If you remove it in any other way, you removed it. You've done what is needed to be done. So you don't need to exactly do it as the Prophet ﷺ did it in this regard. So what he did is, he started by taking water, pouring it on his left hand to wash, because you know that you wash your private parts with your left hand to wash the private parts. And then he removed the residue that was on his private parts. And then he made his wudu, his complete wudu, like he makes wudu for the prayer. And then after he made his wudu, he poured the water on his entire body, making sure that the water got to his scalp. And then he moved away. He moved away because it probably was muddy underneath him. Do you really need to move away in our tubs nowadays? You don't need to, because it was muddy in this area, so he moved to a cleaner area to wash his feet. Simply, just as simple as that. So that's the perfect wudu of the Prophet ﷺ. Then Imam ibn Qudamah says, and Salama, Salama is acting on your behalf. You should really be grateful to Salama. She's always, getting you concessions and stuff like that. So Salama said to the Prophet, I braid my hair, and it's just like a hassle to unbraid my hair every time I need to make ghusl. So he said to her, إنما يكفيك أن تحثي على رأسك 3 حثيات ثم تفيضين الماء عليك فتطهرين. It would be enough for you to pour 3 handfuls of water on your head and undo and basically and then pour water on the rest of your body, and then you become pure. And this was reported by Muslim. So that is the issue of the braiding. Now in the Hanbali madhab, they require women to unbraid their hair for postpartum and menstrual bleeding. This concession in the Hanbali madhab is only limited to ghusl after janaba, after sexual impurity, but it is not applicable in ghusl for postpartum bleeding and menstrual bleeding. And it makes sense because there is no hardship in unbraiding hair once a month. Okay. But it's a controversial issue, and some scholars would allow it also in postpartum and menstrual bleeding. The next point is matters of intention. Imam ibn Qudamah says, وَإِذَا نَوَى بِغُسْلِهِ الطَّهَارَتَيْنِ أَجْزَأَ عَنْهُمَا. The editor here, and I did not notice this because I reviewed it after but the editor here said that the taharatain, the 2 types of purification, is tahara for Jum'ah and tahara for ritual impurity. It's incorrect. So correct this in the book. What is meant here is the tahara al-kubra was-sughra. It's the major and the minor ablutions. But the editor, the good thing is that she added editor between brackets, right? And it is my fault because I didn't notice it, because they sent this to me to review it after editing, but I didn't notice it. But the two types of ablution here is major and minor. What does he mean by this? وَإِذَا نَوَى بِغُسْلِهِ الطَّهَارَتَيْنِ أَجْزَأَ عَنْهُمَا. If one intended by his ghusl both types of purification, it would suffice for both of them. That is wudu and ghusl. Wudu and ghusl. Let's say you need to make wudu and you need to make ghusl. If you make ghusl, you don't need to make wudu. In case you intended that your ghusl will suffice for your wudu. But if you did not intend this, let's say you made ghusl to be able to stay in the masjid. You made ghusl to be able to stay in the masjid. Is it required to have wudu to stay in the masjid? No, it is not. If you made ghusl just to stay in the masjid, if you made ghusl just to recite one verse of the Quran for which wudu is not required, that ghusl will not be sufficient. Will not be sufficient. And you need to make wudu if you need to embark on something that requires wudu. You don't need to do all of this to yourself. When you make ghusl, intend to make ghusl to remove all of your ritual impurity. That's it. Intend by your ghusl to remove all of your ritual impurity. Do not intend to ghusl just to stay in the masjid. Intend to make ghusl to remove all of your ritual impurity. It's just as simple as that. And they would accept it. In the Hanbali method, they would accept this. They would accept it even if you do not specify which ritual impurity. If you just generally intend to remove your ritual impurity. Not ghusl for a particular act of worship. Ghusl to remove your ritual impurity. In general, every time you make ghusl, intend to remove your ritual impurity. Therefore, ghusl will suffice for wudu and you don't need to make wudu. Okay. Then he says, because keep in mind that sometimes the details that the scholars mention that sound a little bit too hyper-technical are because of questions the public pose to the scholars. But if the public really just did what they need to do in a simple manner and were not hyper-technical themselves, the scholars would have not been, figuring out questions for all of these hypothetical scenarios. وكذلك لو تيمم للحدثين والنجاسة على بدنه أجزأ عن جميعها. Likewise, if one made tayammum for the two types of ritual impurity, minor and major, as well as the filth on his body, it would suffice for all. It would suffice for all. وإن نوى بعضها فليس له إلا ما نوى بها. If he intended some of them, then he only gets what he intended. If he intended some of them, then he only gets what he intended. So if you intend just ghusl but not wudu, ghusl for something that does not require wudu, what if you intended ghusl to pray? Does that suffice for your wudu? Yes, because you need wudu to pray. So you must have meant to ghusl that is sufficient for wudu, that acts on behalf of wudu as well. So, but like I told you, do not ever make ghusl or wudu for a particular act of worship. Just make it to remove your ritual impurity. What's so difficult about this? Why do people have to do this to themselves and to the scholars who now have to figure out answers to all of those hypothetical questions? Well, if you made it difficult for yourself and made an intention like a customized intention, then we will have to look at it. Just make a generic intention, general one that I will just remove my ritual impurity. Now that brings us to the end of this, but there are two things that Imam Qudamah did not mention here. And he did not mention, the recommended ghusl. He mentioned the mandatory ghusl. And he said that it becomes mandatory, upon ejaculation or intercourse. But he did not mention recommended ghusl, and he did not mention wudu in place of ghusl. In certain cases, wudu would be prescribed if you want to defer ghusl. So recommended ghusl. In the Hanbali madhab, there are 16 recommended ghusls. 16 recommended ghusls. You'll find this in Sharh al-Muntaha by Buhuti. What are those 16 recommended ghusls? And they're not going to be difficult for you to memorize, by the way, because they come in bundles. What is the first bundle of recommended ghusls? First bundle is four different types of prayer. Jum'ah, Eid, Kusuf or Khusuf, and Istisqa. The prayer for rain and the prayer for eclipse. And you know Jum'ah and Eid. These are four different types. Jum'ah, proven from the Prophet ﷺ, even commands of the Prophet ﷺ. Even he said, "Ghusl al-Jum'ah wajib ala kulli muhtaram." He called it wajib, but wajib not in the technical sense of the word wajib. So that's why the dominant position of the scholars, including the four madhahib, is that ghusl al-Jum'ah is recommended. It is not mandatory. But then there are other views also about al-Hadith and Zahiriyya and so on, that ghusl al-Jum'ah is mandatory. But here it is recommended. Eid, because of reports from the Sahaba, nothing is authentically traceable to the Prophet ﷺ, but reports from the Sahaba and analogy, qiyas against what? Jum'ah. And this qiyas against Jum'ah, and this qiyas against Jum'ah. So it is every major prayer for which people congregate. Jum'ah, Eid, Khusuf, Istisqa. The one that has been proven, traceable to the Prophet ﷺ directly is certainly Jum'ah. The one that is closest to it is Eid. This would be by analogy, and this would be by analogy. Okay, so 4 prayers. Now, Hajj, there are 8 different instances in Hajj where you make wudu. First, when you make ihram, and this is because the Prophet ﷺ, it is traceable that the Prophet made ghusl before he put on his ihram attire. That is traceable to the Prophet. Some of the scholars, don't worry about the controversy here. The Prophet ﷺ did it. It is sunnah to make ghusl before you make your ihram. Okay, so that is the first instance. What is the second? Entering Mecca. Mecca. What is the third? Entering the Haram. Al-Makki, the sacred precinct. Al-Haram, Al-Makki, the sacred precinct. What is the fourth? No, it is not. The masjid.
Oh, okay.
The masjid. Not the sacred precinct of Mecca in general, but just the Haram and the masjid itself. Or the Masjid al-Haram. Then, what else? When standing at Arafah. Then, al-Mabid bil-Muzdalifah. Overnight stay in Muzdalifah. Then what else? Rami al-Jamarat. Stoning, pelting the Jamarat. Pelting the Jamarat.
But isn't that a continuous act from going to Arafah to sleeping?
You're taking a ritual bath according to the Hanbalis, you're taking ritual baths every couple of hours. Then, but keep in mind, they just tell you that this stuff is recommended. So you do of it as much as you can, and it would be good for people to smell nice. You know, particularly when there is a large congregation, large crowd of people. It is not bad to smell nice.
Did the Rasul do all this?
No, what is traceable is this one. From the Prophet ﷺ, what's traceable to the Prophet is this one. This is basically rational, sort of scholarly istihsan. It would not be really, it would not be sort of technically, not technical analogy. So then add to this tawaf al-ifada, two tawafs, tawaf al-ifada and tawaf al-wada'. Tawaf al-ifada, which is the pillar tawaf, tawaf al-ziyara, tawaf al-ifada, and then tawaf al-wada', farewell. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Add them to the 12 that are here. That is 12 recommended ghusl. That's a beautiful thing in Islam. You know, which religion requires you to make ghusl this often, and then recommends for you to make ghusl this often. Emphasis on cleanliness and, you know, basically the cleanliness of the exterior. Because the cleanliness of the interior, which is the main concern of religion in general and spirituality in general, is not in conflict with being clean externally as well.
Are these recommendations exclusive to the Hanabila?
Many of them are, yeah. Then we have 4 more. What do you think before? Okay, if you wake up from coma or insanity, because when the Prophet ﷺ when the Prophet ﷺ got into a coma, and when he woke up, he made the ghusl. And then you wake up from insanity because you don't know what could have happened during that period of insanity, so it is recommended to make ghusl.
Is coma similar to fainting?
Hmm?
Is a coma similar to fainting?
Yes. Unconsciousness. And then we have 2 more. 2 more that are recommended. It's recommended for women who have istihada, prolonged bleeding, prolonged non-menstrual bleeding. Prolonged non-menstrual bleeding. Istihada, to make ghusl with every prayer, or they combine the prayers and they make ghusl with the combined prayers. It's recommended. It is a concession for them to make wudu before every prayer. It's fine. If they make wudu, they're good. But it is recommended for them to make ghusl. And that is basically the graded system that the Prophet taught us in every regard, the graded system. It's like, you could do that, this will be sufficient for you, this will be better for you. The recognition of the different capacities, strengths, aspirations of human beings. And then the last, so this prolonged bleeding, non-menstrual bleeding. And then the last recommended ghusl is when you wash the dead. Washing the dead. You know, in the Hanbali madhab, when you wash someone dead, you must make wudu. According to the authorized position of the Hanbali madhab, you must make wudu. Even though the hadith is not particularly authentic. But there are reports from the Sahaba, such as Abu Hurairah and others. But they recommend for you to make ghusl. After washing the dead, they recommend for you to make ghusl. So these are the 16 different types of ghusl that are recommended in the Hanbali madhab. The last point that I wanted to bring up is wudu in place of ghusl. Let's say, and this applies to two scenarios. This applies to ghusl after major sexual impurity, clarification.
So washing the dead is before washing the dead or
After. Yes. So now the wudu in place of ghusl, if you wanted to defer the ghusl because there is no pending prayer, there are two scenarios. A woman who finished her period, and janaba, a woman or a man who are in a state of sexual, ritual impurity. Okay? For these two scenarios, with a slight difference, if they want to not make ghusl, they just want to go to sleep, they're tired, they want to go to sleep, they do not want to make ghusl. It is recommended, not mandatory, it is recommended for them to make wudu. And the Prophet ﷺ used to do this. And Umar radiallahu anhu asked the Prophet ﷺ whether someone can go to sleep before making ghusl, and he said, yes, if you made wudu. Which is still considered a recommendation. So what are the things that you need to make? Huh?
I said they still have to do ghusl, but
It's not, no, it's not in place of ghusl in the sense temporarily. Like, no, it's not in place of ghusl. Let's remove this. It recommended wudu until you make ghusl. Like you want to sleep, you don't want to have a shower now, you don't want to have a ghusl now, you want to go to sleep. Or you want to eat, or you want to drink, or you want to stay in the masjid. Okay, any of those four, you want to sleep, you want to eat, you want to drink, you want to stay in the masjid, and you do not want to make ghusl, you could make wudu. Whether it is you are here or here, finished period or have janaba.
But you said we can't stay in masjid if we are in state of janaba.
But if you made wudu, Hanbali wise, you have lightened your ritual impurity, now you can stay in the masjid. You're better off just making ghusl.
Let's not put that.
Because if you're going to go to the masjid, it's...
Then I should pray then. What am I doing?
Okay, but it may be handy if you want to sleep. You're just tired, you want to sleep, and you do not want to take a shower. Anyway, so those are the four. Now, having intimacy again. Going back and having intimacy once again would also make wudu recommended in this case. Would make wudu recommended. Ghusl is more recommended. But certainly this, I put this separately because this does not apply to this. This one, who finished her period, she does need ghusl. She does have to make ghusl before intimacy. But for this one, she will be treated like janaba when it comes to any of these four. She could go to sleep, she could eat, she could drink, she could stay in the masjid if she made wudu. Even stay in the masjid. If she made wudu and her period had already finished, stopped, the period stopped, but she has not made ghusl yet. Are you allowed to do all of this without wudu? Yes, you could do any of this without wudu. This is just a recommendation. A recommendation. Clarifications? Yes.
So that for the Hanbali madhab is so for a woman who wants to have intercourse with her husband, we always thought that she's allowed to without ghusl. Even I don't know if that's only the Hanbali madhab. No. I was told that if she was on janaba, if she wanted to have intercourse with her husband, she's allowed to if she's clean and she didn't make ghusl.
Janaba is fine.
Not janaba, I mean from her menses, from her period.
No,
And then she can combine the intention for ghusl.
no. That would not be permissible according to the majority. It would be permissible according to the Hanafis, not the majority. Yeah.
Is there a direct evidence for that, Yanni? According to the majority?
People will argue about the meaning of فَلَا تَقْرَبُهُنَّ حَتَّى يَطْهُرْنَ فَإِذَا تَطَهَّرْنَ فَأْتُوهُنَّ مِنْ حَيْثُ أَمَرَكُمُ اللَّهُ فَلَا تَقْرَبُ. Don't approach them until they become pure. So the Hanafis would say she became pure, she stopped her period finished. And then the majority would say no, حَتَّى يَطْهُرْنَ, meaning that she has attained ritual, like she has become pure after the ghusl. She does not become pure before the ghusl.
Is that the opinion you hold also? The majority opinion?
Yeah, I hold the majority opinion. But it's open for
Discussion.
it's just like, a lot of things are open unless it is clear from the Prophet, unless the Prophet spells it out to us, a lot of things will be open. And that's why ضيق الأفق comes from ضيق الباع. Basically, the narrow-mindedness comes from the limited knowledge. Because had you really given justice to the arguments of the different viewpoints, you would have not been narrow-minded. You would have seen strength in every mujtahid, like a bona fide mujtahid who's making an argument. Certainly, they will have a point. When they don't have a point, that would be extremely rare. When a mujtahid, a bona fide, full-blown mujtahid, just doesn't have a point, would be extremely, extremely rare. Yes, sir.
I just wanted to ask, because I heard in Muhammad that it said that if a man is in the state of janaba, salat time is escape, that he can make wudu and pray. Is that correct? Without making ghusl yet?
No, praying, you have to make ghusl before praying by consensus. And if you have water to make wudu, then you are not really pressed for water. So you have water. What the Shaykh may have said is that if you don't have water, you make tayammum and you pray, which is true. If you don't have water, you make tayammum and you pray. And that is true.
What about the length of time, like, for example?
How?
If there is a very high scarcity of water, what replaces the ghusl? Is it
Tayammum.
Tayammum.
Tayammum. You don't have water, you make tayammum. But the ghusl of the Prophet used to be one sa'. Do you know what one sa' is? 2 liters. 1 mud for his wudu, that is 1/2 liter for his wudu. 1 sa' for his ghusl, that is approximately 2 liters. What's 1 gallon? 3.7? Huh? 3.84? We will have to believe you because you're very precise. 3.84. So we'll believe you for now. Okay. So the Prophet used to make ghusl with about 1/2 gallon. 2 bottles. So you don't really need to have, and that is why the Malikis, that's one of the proofs of the Malikis, that you do need to do that rubbing. Because they said that the Prophet made ghusl with 1 sa'. How could you make ghusl with 1 sa' without rubbing? You really need to do rubbing so that 1 sa' will be sufficient for your entire body. But It's also imaginable that it will be sufficient if you. And that brings us to the end. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.